Welcome to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio, bringing you insights and strategies to help you create a magnificent and fulfilling second half of life. Here's your host, certified professional retirement coach and best-selling author, Dr. Dorian Mintzer.
I want to welcome everybody to my fourth Tuesday interview with expert series. I'm Dorian Mintzer, your host and owner of revolutionizeretirement.com. For those of you who are new to the series, just know that we meet on the fourth Tuesday of each month at 12 noon Eastern Time, except for December because it's just too close to all the holidays then. And sign up always begins the week before at www.revolutionizeretirement.com. So I'm delighted that you're with us, and I'm totally delighted to have Eileen Caroscio. You tell me how to pronounce it right.
That's perfect.
Eileen, is that right? Okay, good. I got it right. Who is our guest today. And I know Eileen through the Life Planning Network and actually was honored to be able to read drafts of the book and actually give inputs in the book. And I think those of you who've read it will see that it's a really wonderful addition to the area of midlife and beyond, midlife new life. So Eileen is a multi-certified coach, consultant, and a registered nurse. She's passionately dedicated to helping individuals achieve their goals and live their best life, especially those midlife and beyond. She's referred to as the Midlife Muse, as she engages you beyond your titles, your jobs, and the formalities to get to the core of what's going to really enrich your midlife, making it more resilient, meaningful, and magical. Midlife New Life, Living Consciously in Midlife and Beyond is an Amazon best-selling book, and she co-authored it with Sandy Demarest and Paul Ward. The book supports the value of giving conscious thought to how you want to live out the second half of your life. It emphasizes the importance of developing a plan for having more joy and resilience in order to bounce forward into the enriched future that you create for yourself. Eileen holds a BS, a Baccalaureate of Science degree in nursing from Catholic University and a Master's of Science degree in nursing from Marymount University, totaling over 35 years of diverse experiences. Adding to her nursing, she's got 19 years of experience as a consultant and coaches really for life transitions. In her free time, Eileen can be found walking in nature, hiking, or kayaking. She has a fondness for foxes and can often be found with her camera, capturing their antics and escapades. So maybe we'll learn a little about that too during how that one developed. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, Eileen. And it's a really wonderful book. It's so well written, and it's structured in a really interesting, helpful way. And so I'm going to start with really asking you, how did this book, come about and the working together with both Sandy and Paul?
Okay. I just want to say thank you, Dory, for the invitation today. I'm really delighted to be in conversation with you and with our listeners. Okay. So our book started way back in 2019. Paul Ward, who owns the Too Young to Retire certification program, asked in a newsletter to his certified program facilitators that he was seeking two colleagues to co-write a book on midlife. So he had 35 submissions, and ultimately he selected Sandy Demarest and I to be co-writers. And from that point on, we signed on as equal partners through and through to the end. We just clicked well from the very beginning in fellowship and collaboration, and it continues to this day. Just to say that the three of us have a lot of experience and expertise in midlife and later life. And we were all fascinated and interested in the internal thoughts and the external behaviors of living consciously. And our book dives into those mindsets and the actions that support, optimizing it and energizing your midlife and beyond so that we like to say new life. And just a little bit more on the book. We designed the book around things that we were interested in, and they turned out to be 11 themes. The 11 themes became our chapters with purpose as the heart center. And we really felt like being intentional about how you think about things and how you make decisions and act on them can give you your best new life. And we had, 3 areas of like knowledge, expertise, and experience and wisdom that we wanted to share. So one was from us, and then another source was from all the research we did on second half of life. And then the third part, which was the most interesting and very enjoyable, was the interviews that we did with over 50 people who shared their wisdom about what they learned from their challenges. And in the back of the book, we just have a lot of resources and questions that you can take it further. So in a nutshell, that's how that book became into reality.
Great, thanks. And I know I had mentioned to Eileen that, I really would be happy to interview her or, any combination. And what I really love is that you're all, because of the different experiences you have, you're each sort of charting your own ways of doing, some of the interviews, and I assume probably some things together, but that just sounds so nice and respectful that, you each can kind of develop your sort of own following for it. Did that evolve out of some of the, the working together on it, or did you have these ideas at the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning, we wanted to write the book to share about the message, and we also wanted to develop more our businesses and share it individually and together. So that was a conscious decision.
Uh-huh. No, that's really great because I know, sometimes collaborations can work really, really well and sometimes they don't work quite as well. So it's really nice, the kind of respectful way. I know I was at the little launch party you had and it was, and it was just lovely, sort of hearing from all of you of just, the important creation that you've done together and the camaraderie that you've had. I just really admire that. So back to the structure of the book, do you want to maybe share with people, I know, as you said, the purpose is sort of the heart center. It might be helpful if you're willing to share what some of the other, aspects are so people can kind of get their head around the way you've, selected the themes, because I think they're quite lovely.
Yeah, thank you. So we all have, areas of expertise and experience. And so in the very beginning, we essentially made lists of what we were interested in, what we liked, what we did talks on. And, it worked so well because each of us had different ones. And so some of these, if you look at the handout, we have living well as one of our areas. And to go back, we have purpose in the very beginning because everything begins with our purpose. Why do we get up in the morning? And some of those other ones I'll just go over briefly is money, appreciating money. We have to work to live. And then later, maybe we can work for fulfillment and maybe we can work for fulfillment and to live at the same time. And savoring the world is another thing about the world is quite beautiful. We can travel in it. We can decide where we want to live, how we want to contribute to the world. Another aspect is living life creatively. That's where the fun and the magic happen. There's a lot to live when you try different things out. You will stretch yourself. Minding relationships is all about the support that we need and give to others in our community as we build community. And helping humanity is about our community, ourselves, our planet. How can we help each other? And living with technology, there's a lot going on with technology, especially as we age, that can help us age and also can provide challenges in terms with ethics. And then bouncing forward is it takes all the components of these chapters that we, have suggestions, we have information, and then kind of putting it all together so that you have these challenges, but it will help you get through those challenges with less angst, I would say.
Great. And I must comment too, you've got kind of lovely reflection questions and things at the end of each chapter, which is helpful. So this, what you just shared is a great segue into sort of my other question, which, maybe you've sort of a little bit alluded to by the themes that you have, but there are many opportunities, challenges, and changes, that certainly occur in midlife and beyond. Can you, maybe just elaborate about the changes part, perhaps?
Sure. Change happens. That is the fact. That's something that we know. When we talk about change, we often talk about it in terms of an event, our circumstances, a change in status quo. And there's like categories of change. So that there's the speed of change. Sometimes change happens so fast that you didn't see it coming. Like 1 minute you're very healthy, and then the next minute you have a really scary diagnosis to deal with. Or 1 minute you're married in a good relationship, and then later your spouse is asking for a divorce. And then there's things in our environment that are not really personal to us, but happen. So here in the Baltimore area, the Francis Scott Key Bridge came down. Who saw that coming? But those are things that you would have to deal with. And so those are the speed being very fast. And ultimately, things can happen gradually. So you may be going to the doctor more frequently. Your health is changing. You might have changes in your relationship where your friends are moving away to be near their grandchildren or moving to warm climates. Or your friends are retiring or starting new businesses. If these are things that you can maybe prepare for when they're more gradual and incremental. And then there's like the quality of changes, quantity of changes. So like you might just have one change, or you may have a cluster. So both of your parents die within a short time. Your car needs repairs and your daughter's moving back home. There's a lot of things to juggle, and this can affect our resilience. And then again, just like one last category is like, did you choose the change? Did you choose to maybe move to be near your children? Or did the condo association decide to sell and you need to find a new home? So all those things affect us and impact us. It may be very different from each person. And I'm trying to think of the fellow, Bruce Feller. He's an author.
Feiler. Yeah.
Yes, Feiler. Thank you. Yeah. And, he talked about life quakes for those massive sources of change. But they're certainly there on the horizon. I mean, there's so many that you can think of, and there's so many that you can't, like your empty nest, discovering that, you no longer have the health or energy to maintain your beloved home or garden that you tended for years, a source of pride, downsizing, becoming disabled, or becoming a caregiver, in death of family or friends, even becoming an executive of an estate. If you've never done this, there's a lot involved. And so there's also like good things that are happening. You're becoming maybe a grandparent. You're getting remarried. You're retiring. You're becoming a mentor. So it's a mixture of things. But the aim of, resilience is to smooth those little sharp edges of all those changes.
Well, I think that's an excellent thing to think about. And I was thinking about Bruce Feiler. I mean, many people who've been, part of my series for a while know I interviewed him way back when his when that book came out, and this whole idea of that we can't, change happens, as you're saying, and it's how we deal with it that becomes the really important thing, and they're the disruptors and the life quakes, as you say. So, tell us more about resilience then, because I know that's a big part of what we're going to be focusing on today and a big part of the book. So, well, first, I guess it's probably helpful to think about how do you define what is resilience? How do you define it? What's the positives and negatives, the upside and downside of thinking about resilience?
Yeah, so how we define resilience is the ability to combine supportive mindsets and actions that inspire us to move forward. And as we like to say, bounce forward with hope from those changes, challenges, and adversities. And then, the change is one thing, a change in circumstances, but you adapt internally to that change, and that's what we call transition. And I would imagine that many of your listeners are very familiar with William Bridges' book that was published way back in 1979, Transition. But he identified those three important phases of transitions, the ending phase, like a loss of a loved one or a loss of a job, and the neutral phase, where you feel like nothing really is happening, but it is underneath, and that beginning phase. And so the downside of a transition, so to speak, is the messy middle, which is that neutral phase, and it's just uncomfortable. You have confusion. You're undecided. You may feel like you're alone or disoriented, and you may just not feel confident, especially if you're like the go-to person where you had all the answers and now you don't. You have some grieving for the loss, and you might feel very vulnerable. You're trying new things out. But if you've heard that saying, out of chaos comes a star, that's the upside. The upside is the creativity, that this is a catalyst for just like putting new ideas and making new connections on your creative life canvas. So we certainly have a lot of acquired skills and talents and life lessons that we can apply like in just new and creative ways on our canvas. We don't have to have a blank canvas. We can move things around. We can try new things and add things. And so although you may feel like a hot mess, you're a pot of possibilities and potential. I guess as Brene Brown says, like, we can start to, dare greatly. And so you have like that mix. You have like that messy middle where maybe you're releasing all the old ways of thinking and feeling. And then you're also making space for like new ideas and new people in it. It's just the bridge, and maybe a little wobbly till you get to the new beginning.
Sort of a nice way to look at it. I'm just curious, since your book is sort of Midlife and Beyond, in the research you did, or in the, even just thinking about it, do you find a difference between people that are sort of at the younger part of midlife, beginning to think about it, I guess in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, versus many of us who are now in our 70s, late 70s, 80s, 90s? Just sort of wonder if, sort of the younger ones versus older ones have, I just kind of wonder if you see any difference in how people deal with the challenges of the external change, whether it be voluntary or involuntary, and then, sort of the working through the messy middle.
Mm-hmm. That is a very, very interesting question. And so the younger, let's say maybe 50, they may have a lot more on their plate in terms of doing. They maybe have in a sandwich situation, so they have their own job. Maybe they're taking care of their older parents that maybe, are maybe in their 80s, and maybe they're taking care of their kids. So they might have more on their plate with jobs, relationships, whereas someone that is older, there's maybe more health issues and more internal issues, more acquiring wisdom. So there is some distinction. It's a really interesting question, but yeah, there is somewhat of a distinction because there's different areas of focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is just, I find it kind of interesting. And it's interesting, too, we actually were talking about using your book in a book group that I'm part of, and people were sort of thinking about the older versus the younger, and, that actually this book could be a kind of a helpful thing of olders talking with youngers about some of these things in the anticipation of the changes that happen as we get older. So it's sort of an interesting sort of idea of how to use your book in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd like to add to what you asked. So some of the people in the title, they said, "Oh, Midlife New Life," and they would say, "Well, I'm in the Beyond, category."
Yeah.
And so they read it and they felt like there was a lot applicable to all ages. And they had some, areas that were more applicable than others. But they said, there was still, good information, good resources. Learning about technology was something very interesting to them. But I love that question.
Yeah, great. Well, we can think more about it. So part of what I'm hearing, and I totally agree, is that part of how we deal with this transition, how we make the choices, how do we come out, hopefully maybe with, even post-traumatic growth rather than, kind of going down a slippery slope or a rabbit hole when, there's life quakes. So, and how important resilience is into this. So, maybe talk more about, sort of how you're viewing resilience, ways, what are the rewards of being resilient? And is it something one can really develop?
Yeah, good question. So the rewards of resilience are many. I mean, basically, it's less angst, things are smoother. We can't really go back exactly be the same person we were before a change because we ourselves within us have had a transition. We have more life lessons. And so we do bounce forward and not go back to the same self. An image I'd like to bring about resilience is just imagine yourself on a surfboard. You're just riding the waves. They're coming along. Resilience is very similar to this. So you learn how to balance yourself. You learn how to be agile and flexible. Oh, new waves coming. What do I need to do? How do I need to move? The more you learn how to balance yourself with different types of waves, and this can be in terms of challenges, you develop confidence and competence in how you do that. I'd just like to read you just a real quick comment by one of the people we interviewed. She was in her 80s. Betty McDowell says, "Life is about continually finding new balances and perspectives. Your circumstances change, and then you have to start rearranging your life. One day you go from being married to being a widow, from being a full-time mother to being a grandmother. Take time to think, assess your situation, and find your new balance." So that reward is about finding that new balance. And one of the things that we found in interviewing the many people that we did is that those that had challenges and went through the messy middle, they came to a new beginning, but they're more joyful and they're happy and they felt like they mastered a situation. And we heard this like over and over, these words, these ideas. And so we coined the phrase, the resilience effect, for that sense of happiness and joy and mastery. And, there's also many rewards in terms of health and wellness. You live longer, you get less colds, your immune system is better, you can sleep better, you have more empathy because you've gone through something, so sometimes your relationships are improved. You have more focus and memory, but overall, it's a much better well-being.
Mm-hmm. It really makes sense. I love the image of the surfboard and, having to shift your balance and things like that, and the quote that you shared. I think that's a nice way to think about it, that there are these waves that will come and try to knock us off, and some might, I guess, too, along the way. And how do we right ourselves? How do we keep going forward? And and how did you come up with the bounce forward? I think that's a nice little picture too of sort of bouncing forward.
Well, we hear often, bounce back, but we know that we just can't go back there. And so we played with the words. We had our themes, and we did some wordsmithing, what felt good to us, what made sense to us. So we've seen bouncing forward before, referred to, and we loved that. So that we adapted that as something that
nice.
Yeah, visibly feels good.
That's great. So I know you've developed this sort of process and model of building resilience, or building that kind of resilience muscle in order to kind of get through, as you say, the messy middle. Can you kind of walk us through that? I think you have you talk in the book, and maybe you can help people understand the approach that you take on how to really get that resilience muscle stronger.
Yeah. So how do we get anywhere is through our GPS, which uses a map. So the same thing here. We get through by using a map. And that map here stands for mindset, actions, and plans. And then in just doing our research in resilience, we found many books, many articles had abundance of tips, tools, and techniques such as 21 best resilient tips or 101 ways, to help you do more resilient things. And they all seem potentially really helpful. But I just wondered if it's just a simple, easy approach or method to just consistently build resilience. Was there a cohesive approach? And all along, we as the co-authors, we just focused on mindsets. And we know mindsets are, science tells us how important mindsets are. We focused on mindsets and actions for each themed area. And so I simply took that template for mindsets and actions and plans and put it in a process. And this is extra today. It's not really in the book, but it is a great process. I'm getting positive feedback from it. So I just also want to say that we identified 8 mindsets in our book. We created names for them. And for today, I'm just choosing the well-being mindset. And this is something that supports your healthiest self. It's multi-dimensional and it's holistic. And it's a base to start. And I think the best way, Dory, to explain this process is to illustrate it using one of the people that we interviewed.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Let me just, if you're willing, though, before we focus on the wellness one, is because I do think that, you mention a number of mindsets, and often I think many of the listeners know, and have thought about kind of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And you've got sort of some other ones that it just might be helpful to mention if you're willing, because I think they're interesting, and then come back and focus on the well-being one if that's okay with you.
Sure. So we identified the novice mindset, and this is really about like cultivating a beginner's perspective. It's about being open and curious and asking questions, just being willing to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. Another one is the acceptance mindset. Acceptance is a really challenging thing to do, especially when you're accepting a change or dealing with a change of a loss of a loved one, becoming a widow or a widower. And it talks about, accepting some of these things rather than, fighting that change or not accepting. And we understand that it is very difficult to do, and we don't simplify it. The other one is the competent mindset. And this is really about like expanding your peripheral, vision, like knowing what is working for you and what's not working for you. And let's see, the confident mindset. These are like, things that we want to focus on. So the confident mindset is always looking at, your strengths and your skills and what you can pull forward from, your past that you're very good at. Let's say the fifth one is the courageous mindset. So it's about stepping forward, maybe when you don't feel so courageous, but just taking a small step, being okay with gray areas. And let's see, the positive futures mindset is focusing on your future. What is out there that, you essentially want? And this could be something, for a career. Maybe you want a career change. Maybe you want to start a business. It's like focusing on a lot of opportunities. And then we get to the well-being mindset.
Right. Great. So because I think that chapter and focusing on the mindset is such a rich one. So I just really wanted people to, have a sense of the different ones. And so now let's go with what you were going to take us through with the well-being. And I do want to encourage people, please, submit any questions, comments, so that I'll be able to integrate them too as, during this time that we're talking together. So go ahead. Well-being, the well-being mindset. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that, and we all do think as co-writers that we're always interested in engagement with others, in building community. That's where a lot of resilience wisdom comes from. So yes, ask questions and engage, and we can become more resilient together.
Good.
Okay. So this map, I'm going to illustrate it with Kathy McAvoy. Kathy developed breast cancer. She had a very successful career as a vice president of product development, who's raising 2 sons with her husband. And so under the map, under the M for mindset, Kathy chose the well-being mindset. And so her thoughts, this is part of the mindset, the thoughts she had were, my health and well-being are top priority. My family is a top priority. And she asked herself, how can I optimize my well-being in this situation? And her images that she told us was that she wanted, to be healthy and strong and happy and courageous for as she, was going through treatment, and also future image of her family, seeing her sons grow up, having fun dinners and activities in the future. So those thoughts and images that, provided her with that vision, something to hang her hat on, an anchor to focus her on. And so that's the M of the mindset, was the thought, the images that she had. And then under the A of actions, Kathy chose her actions from the 4 building blocks of resilience. And these 4 building blocks are physical well-being, emotional well-being, social well-being, and spiritual well-being. And so she chose actions to support those 4 areas. And I'll give you some examples of what she chose. So Kathy, under physical well-being, Kathy chose sleep is important to me. I'm going to make sure I go to bed early. I'm going to make sure that I get a good sleep. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to exercise in the form of walking. Now, for the emotional well-being, she chose something that maybe none of you would choose, but this was good for Kathy. She chose to get a dog. She wanted a dog to love. She wanted to walk the dog. She wanted to focus on something other than herself that made her happy. So she got a dog. And then again, our book is about thinking consciously, being in alignment with what you want. So she decided, I do really well as a project manager, a vice president of product development. I'm going to take those skills and I'm going to use them and be my own project manager for my health and well-being. So she decided to quit her job with their corporate entity and give her time to her recovery with her family and friends. That was a big decision for Kathy, but it was a relief for her. And then social well-being. She wanted to spend time with people that nourished her, that had a sense of humor and goodwill. And then in the spiritual being, Kathy made time for quiet, like reflective and meditative time. And I remember the book that she told me that she chose for this was the Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, Awakening Your Life's Purpose. Mm-hmm. And she also decided that she would have like a future goal that, she would contribute something. She's a very smart person, is a very smart person. And so she created a company later on just called Celebrating Pink for post-cancer treatment celebrations. I can go into that another time. But, she had all these actions that she chose and under the 4 building blocks of resilience. So that's the A of the action. And then the P is the details of the plan. So like how and when would Kathy, integrate all these things? And, she chose the best times for her, which I don't need to go into, but there was a bigger plan. And this is on your handout, which was this A, B, C, D, E model. So if you look at that model, you can fill it in. Dr. Polwan did a lot of research on resilience, and he's a very intelligent and creative man with his work. Anyway, A is to accept, which cannot be changed. And this is almost like a threshold for people to get over, because sometimes that accepting is quite challenging, as we spoke about before. And then B is to believe that life is still worth living, to affirm your core values of what's important now to you. And then C is to commit to your relevant goals and actions. So some of those things that we saw under actions, you could put them in here. You commit to them. And D is for discover. You're discovering new things about yourself and about life. You're developing life lessons. And E is to enjoy your positive outcomes and your progress, and to evaluate it also. Like, how did it go? What could you have done different? And so that is essentially, the MAP process. And, putting that all together, one can, fill in these areas of themselves. And rather than saying, well, you could do, A, B, and C, Kathy chose the dog. So, I do have a list of these things that you can get on my website. However, I didn't want to, bring them out right now because I think people intrinsically have their own ideas about what would work best for them.
This might be a good time to tell people about your website.
Okay, yeah. So on my website, I have the 4 building blocks of resilience as a reference sheet. I have items, to consider for the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. And I know you may have your own ideas, and if you run out of ideas, this might give you some prompts and some clues to maybe, what else you could do that could support yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very, very interested in how any of the listeners here would be having to apply this to their own situation. Are you retiring? Have, you lost someone, changing jobs? What are some of the thoughts or images that you might have in mind? I know this is like a new process, but it might be something that we could work together and just try out. And so, feel free to put them out there for Dory. And as, maybe you're coming up with some ideas and questions. I mean, one of the things too is that the 3 of us, we believe that just, sharing our stories and life lessons is how we just acquire wisdom, how we acquire resilience, and how we build community. And it's through these types of discussions that we learn, grow, we just expand and bounce forward. And so this map process you can, use with any situation. You can customize it and you put in as much information or as little information as you want. And science tells us like mindsets really matter when it comes to well-being. So you can have those mindset thoughts and you can even use them as affirmations. You can develop mantras. Some of us have interviewed people that said that they developed a mantra, a thought, this too will pass, or no mud, no lotus. And let's see, with some of the images, I mean, go ahead.
No, I'm back. I'm sorry. I had to mute myself for a minute because there was some background noise, but you keep going and people, please, a couple of things have, come through that I will share, but talk about the images. Yeah.
So the images can be really as important as the thoughts because they are coming from our subconscious. When I worked with caregivers, oftentimes I hear that they want to use the image of a full pitcher of water. They like to remind themselves that you can't pour from an empty pitcher. And this is something like to remind them to take care of themselves. So images can be things that are out there that maybe might not make sense to others, but make sense to you. And, that A for actions, you can put in as much as you want or as little. Same thing with, your plans. And one thing I think that might be helpful is that to think about an Olympic ice skater, for example, like Dorothy Hamill comes to mind with her triple axel. So with this map process, you have your basics, what those categories are, and you can add to them. So Dorothy Hamill didn't just be able to do like a triple axel. She was able to learn how to ice skate, and then how to make a turn, and then how to make another turn, and then she put it all together and was able to do this beautiful maneuver. It's the same thing with the map. As you put those pieces together, and over time you will become more resilient. You persevere and you're patient, and you continue to try new things out.
These are really, really helpful examples, I think. Let me just integrate a little. So Betsy from Durham says, my two current issues are, one, a recent loss of lifelong friend, and two, checking account has been compromised twice, causing much anxiety. And Mary from Mattapan had commented that, she's done a bit of research on complicated grief and therapy and around people dying in succession, with many people kind of, we're talking about that before, friends dying, maybe relatives dying. And it's like a long process. And she, was wondering if, there are recommendations to help with this process. And, in part, I guess the question is how to maybe use this map and the building blocks and the ABCDE, how to help with those kind of things. And let me just ask those two first, and then we have another. But just any thoughts you have on those comments, questions?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. And well, with grief, to be patient with yourself, because that acceptance of losing such a dear and loved one can take time. And perhaps, when you have some, quiet time is to look at some of the things that you might be able to do. And sleep certainly can, help in this area, getting a good sleep, doing walking out in nature to get sunshine, or forest bathing, talking with others. And in terms of complicated grief and supporting your emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being, a counselor, a therapist can help greatly with this and help you, move forward. But you can, try this, this MAP process with, getting, what is the mindset that you'd like to have, maybe some of, the thoughts and images, maybe seeing, yourself doing something that you enjoy in the future. And then maybe putting, just a few actions into place and see how that goes, and then evaluate and then add maybe some actions.
I think those are some, good viewpoints. And I think it seems like your response was relevant both for Mary and Betsy. So Norman from New York says, we've all made many changes throughout our lives. Why is the change to enter retirement seem so different?
That's another good question. So retirement is a very significant change because it is a structure that with work we have, our purpose for getting up in the morning. If it relates to the mission of the organization, you get a paycheck. You have predictability to your day. What time you're getting up or commuting to work, and what your expectations are, how you're going to use your time. You have your whole social network, maybe from 9 to 5. You're, working with colleagues. You're having cognitive and social engagement. And then you retire and you have all that free time. It's 40 plus hours. What are you going to do about it? So it is fairly significant because now you have your time rich, and what are you going to do with it? And it involves decision making and prioritizing. How will you use that time? And what are the things that you get from retirement? What are those things, and how will you replace them? Is it people that's important? Is it your identity of who you are at work? How will you, replace them? And looking at that. And that's something that you can potentially, use the map for is thinking, what is the mindset I want to have? And what is the vision and the images? And put those pieces and slowly, build up what you're going to do with your time.
I think some good responses to that. And let's see, Melanie from California says, how do you get to the acceptance stage when the change is not something you initiated, but that it's happened to you? She says, I'm having trouble moving from the anger and feeling victimized state to see the positives, as others are telling me I'm going to be able to create a better situation for myself.
Yeah, that is a very good question too, Melanie, and looking to see what is available, because that acceptance part, it is a challenge, and you might find that in looking at some of the practices of self-renewal, self-care, self-compassion. Loving kindness is a meditation. It's also called metta, M-E-T-T-A, that could potentially help soften that anger. Maybe, creating a time for yourself for reflection and writing down how you feel and talking, to others. Another thing that people have shared that they have done is getting a very beautiful porcelain pot, putting it on your kitchen table and, filling it with dirt and a little seed and watching it grow. And that helps maybe symbolize that things take time, and that, over time, then you might have, a little bit more acceptance, and you see that little seedling, coming up. And
that's
the
nice.
other thing, yeah.
I was going to say that's a nice little image too of growing something, sort of thinking about that mastery, but growing something, taking time, watching it. But go ahead. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And also we feel that if you need more help, again, mental health therapists, there's people that help, get through the anger and the grief, and to help you get to the other side. So that can complement some of the well-being mindsets and actions that you could take.
Mm-hmm. So what if, so I have another question, just thinking that in many of the examples and interviews you've done, which, there's some lovely kind of examples, and many of the people are professionals or people that have kind of the wherewithal, financially to manage things. Do you have a sense of how, I'm thinking particularly the mindset chapters, but just in general, ways that people who are less fortunate financially or, who have to keep working. I was thinking of this example you gave, with using the wellness mindset, and, clearly she was in a situation where she could give up her corporate job, and devote herself and do it. So, thoughts when maybe life circumstances aren't quite as nurturing, or solid, how one still can use kind of these principles that I think are such an important part of your book?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And yeah, Kathy was able to have the means to do that. And we do recognize that not everybody, has that available to them. So it's starting with the basics, things that are available to each of us. And those are like simple things, just like breathing exercises, because there's a lot of stress. And as a nurse, breathing exercises, will bring down your blood pressure. And there's a lot of health effects when we are stressed, and we're continually stressed. So something simple that doesn't cost any money, you don't need anything except for yourself, is deep breathing. And there's ideas about what we call box breathing. So you can imagine a bottom line and a line up and a line on top over and a line down. So you would, breathe in for count of 4, and you would hold for 4, and then you would release for 4. So that's one of several different breathing exercises, but in the moment, that can help bring down stress. So there's physical things that you can do. You try to get good sleep, hydrate, don't focus on processed foods. Sometimes we may not want to cook, and so processed foods are like easy and available, but try to focus on maybe, eating maybe some more fruits and vegetables. So those are some things in the physical realm. But I'd like to tell you about someone, Elizabeth White wrote this book, 55, Underemployed and Faking Normal, Your Guide to a Better Life. And in her book, Elizabeth talks about, resilience circles and sharing in conversation about some of the stresses you're going through and developing maybe some ideas of how you can help each other in community. You could just use this on the phone. You could use this on Zoom. So this is a person that, shares about how to create a resilience circles, and you can look for resilience circles. There's things in the community that are free and available. Even libraries have more information about these and sometimes tapped on their walls. So there are, things that you can do and find in your community. And there's also your faith-based areas of perhaps, spiritual centers can help with that and often offer free resilience and coping strategies. So there is help out there, even if you don't have maybe the financial resources.
That's really helpful and great to hear. I have another question I'm going to ask. So, and Betsy from Durham has another question. She just wants to know, does your book include examples of all of the different mindsets with actions and plans, the map, as you show on your handout?
It does not. However, it does provide some ideas, of what you can do additionally. Some ideas are like just paying attention to your intuition. Although something may, sound very, very logical, if it doesn't grab you, if it doesn't, you don't like the idea, you may have a hard time like sustaining that choice for you. So we have like practices, like keeping visible reminders of your successes and strengths. I took this class from a creativity guru. She's well known, Jill Badonsky. She says to, keep a reminder journal of all the things that you've done or accomplished, or as small as they can be, doodle in them, make a credit report, which is, again, something very similar to the reminder journal, make small lists. So the answer to your question, no, we don't have everything explained about that, but there's a lot in there, and you can go to my website and you can, get it's reference sheets to the 4 building blocks.
Great. And say again your website so people know how to get to it.
So it's Passageways, Passageways, coaching.net. And so that's on the front page. You can just to see it there. It'll be easy to find, passagewayscoaching.net.
Perfect. Great. And I really do recommend the book. I mean, I think it's, as I've said, well written. No book can have everything in it. So, but, there's a lot of ways to think about the reflections and I do think that it's really helpful. I think that the chapter on the bouncing forward and the different mindsets, as I said earlier, I particularly resonate with that. And I love that you have all these different acronyms and mnemonics, and you have a resilience mnemonic that's sort of in the book too. We don't have time to go into all those things, but I just want to sort of recommend that I think people will find the book just so well written and organized and be helpful. And if you're at the later stages of the second half of life, I think there's parts of things that can be really helpful, just as you've given some lovely examples of sort of just opening ourselves to more of the creativity and the joy, and maybe even using it in an intergenerational way of talking with some of the younger, people who are coming along and beginning to kind of get more conscious and intentional of this process and dealing with change and transition. I think it's a lovely contribution. So I would love you to share any other final takeaways that you'd like, to have the listener hold on to as we pull things together today.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your kind thoughts. A few things. One, in relation to what you just said, is even if you don't have struggles right now, there's things that you can do to build your resilience in advance that they might show up. So one is building your social network and reach across intergenerations towards the young and older have a lot to offer as the group that you may be in. So that, that is something just to mention. And to remember that we have choices, and that resilience is just a learnable skill. Remember Dorothy Hamill and putting it all together. And just trying out the map, you can customize it, put in as much as you want with it, and it'll allow you to bounce forward. And also to take a look, if you have the book, we do have the mnemonic on page 290, which goes in and talks about some of these things in a little bit more focus. So, taking a look at that. So in a combination with the map and the mnemonic and what we talked about today, I hope that you can bounce forward and try out your creative ideas and see how that works for you.
Great. I think that's wonderful advice and pulling it together. And thank you so much, Eileen, for being here today and taking the time and sharing your perspective and expertise and being one of the co-authors of this really very helpful book, Midlife New Life.
Well, thank you so much, Dory, and thank you for the people that attended and are interested in this topic. I appreciate you have the platform for all of us to continue to learn all about the topics that you have and the people that are on your program. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative to people that ask the questions, and I will get that book out.
Great.
Soon.
I will send you the address. So, okay. Thank you again so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody for, being listeners today and being part of the call. Take care. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show, listen to past episodes, or download our free retirement transition guide, visit revolutionizeyourretirementradio.com.